Before we dive into this episode, we wanted to take the opportunity to say a heartfelt thank you for being here. Whether you've been with us from the very beginning when we started this podcast in 2019 or you're new, welcome.
We hope you enjoy what you hear, and if you do, please download it, share it with friends, and leave a review. It really helps us get better guests and share the midlife love. Today on the Midlife Mentors, we're joined by Lyndsey Simpson, serial entrepreneur, author of The Age Rebellion, and a powerful voice challenging everything we've been told about getting older. Because here's the truth, we're living longer than ever before, decades longer in fact, and yet so many of us are still following an outdated societal script of winding down, playing small, or waiting for retirement to finally live.
Lyndsey is leading what she calls an age rebellion, a movement to rewrite the rules, reclaim control, and design a second half of life that's driven by passion, purpose, and possibility. In this inspiring and uplifting conversation, we explore what it really means to take ownership of what comes next, how to break free from limiting beliefs about age, and why your most exciting, fulfilling years are most definitely still ahead of you. So if you're feeling as though there must be more, and want to build a life you never want to retire from, take a listen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
It's me, Claire. How are you? I feel like we've recorded quite a few podcasts recently.
It's
back
been
to back.
a few on a trot, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's really, really great. We've got to meet some really amazing people. We've got a wonderful guest coming up today for you listeners. But yeah, we've just had some really great people talking about various different things.
Yeah, it's been great variety. And we've also been really busy getting booked in. We've got another workshop. We just did our separation after infidelity for a client.
Yeah, that was heavy going.
Wow.
Heavy going.
Yeah, it was heavy going, but great. Yeah, and I've got a how to make your midlife better workshop coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you discovered that I'm giving a keynote at Elevate in June.
Yeah, I found it on social media before you'd actually told your wife. And I was like, okay.
That's how we roll.
Things are moving so fast in your world that I'm finding out things from social media. No, it's good. It's all good. But anyway, without further ado, let's dive into our wonderful guest that we have today.
For this one. So today we are thrilled to be joined by Lyndsey Simpson, who is the CEO, founder of 55 Redefined, and now author of The Age Rebellion. Welcome, Lyndsey.
Thank you so much, James and Claire. Lovely to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you
here. I'm happy to finally kind of meet you, even though it's online, because James has met you before online and you've had a chat and stuff. And he came off really excited about the conversation you had. And obviously, I've known about 55 Redefined and all the amazing work that you're doing. So I'm really chuffed that I get to actually interview you today about all of this stuff and obviously your new book. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to just start, maybe give us a little bit of your background? Like, what inspired you to start up 55 Redefined? Give us an overview of your journey, and maybe just tell people, if they haven't heard, what 55 Redefined is.
Yeah, of course I will. So 55 Redefined is predominantly a B2B business. So we serve corporates around the world and we age enable them. So we give them age intelligence, we give them tools, all with the view being that we are solving work for the 100-year life. And that requires us having a bit of a rethink if we're all going to be working very comfortably into our 70s and beyond. It's a global business. We work with over 300 corporates, from Amazon to AXA to Diageo to Warner Brothers. And we have teams in the USA, teams in the UK, but serve 44 different countries from that. So that's the day job. And I will tell you why I'm so obsessed with over 50s when I'm not actually over 50 yet. And then the book that publishes in May, again globally, so it's a transatlantic publication of The Age Rebellion, is all for individuals. So I spend my life talking one-to-many and to employees and thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people in corporates. And I feel like there's just this massive part of the universe, 95+% of people who don't work in large corporates and therefore don't have access to the information and the insight and the agency that we can give to people to supercharge this phase of their life. And so my book is my gift to people to really help them really kind of take a plan and have a future that they never want to retire from, quite frankly.
I love that. What a great angle. That's what we're all about as well. Live a
never
life that
retire
you
from.
don't feel like you want to retire from.
Exactly. So what got me here? Well, for those of you that are just on audio only and can't see my face, I am level 47. I like to talk about ages in levels because people psychologically kind of like going up levels. It's a bit like gaming mentality. I want to be level 50, level 100. But we don't always feel so confident talking about ages. And my epiphany happened about 6 years ago, actually. I was in my early 40s. I'm a banker by background, so I spent 10 years or so in banking, buying and selling businesses for Barclays. And then I had a recruitment and HR outsourcer, and I've had multiple other businesses, bars, restaurants, you name it. But my epiphany happened 6 years ago when I was the CEO of a HR and recruitment outsourcer, one of the large ones in the UK. And I took a phone call from NatWest Bank, and they needed to hire bankers from the 1990s for a big regulated review of work that they'd given in the 1990s, where there potentially was some missell or some bad advice. And of course, they couldn't find anyone from the 1990s because by this point they were all in their 60s and were retired from the bank. And so the FCA, the regulator for the banking industry, wouldn't allow them to hire back ex-employees to come back to work because they're like, well, they'll recognise the names in the files and in effect be marking their own homework. So go find other bankers from that period. And they couldn't find any. They weren't on LinkedIn, they weren't applying to job adverts. And so they rang me going, you understand banking, you understand the world of recruitment, where do we go and find a bunch of retired bankers? And so I didn't know the answer, but I do still have my mobile phone number from the 1990s when I worked in Barclays. I've ported it with me ever since. And I set about ringing ex-colleagues that were still in my phone book that I hadn't spoken to in over a decade and asking them if they would fancy unretiring and coming back to work through my business as a contractor. And in 8 weeks, I hired 400 people out of retirement with a mobile phone. So it was fairly game-changing.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
It was
400.
bonkers. 400. It was an almost 1-in-1 hit ratio of who we rang wanted to return to work. And so it had a couple of epiphany moments for me. One was around the fact that, it's not 1975, and so I'm not building an outbound telephone business. So there has to be a digital way that we can create communities and reach people in their millions in this demographic to find them ways back into work. But the bigger moment for me was the stories that they all told me. And the biggest regret in life that everybody I spoke to said that they had was retiring. Wow. That was it. They all thought they wanted to be retired. They could all afford to be retired because this was an ex-banking crew. And they were all targeting it like it was their destination in life. If I can retire at 58, but my power was, 50, 59 or 60, somehow I've won at life. If I can, just go screw you work. They were having like calendars on the, days till I kind of say, bugger off, I'm no longer going to be working again. But none of them had given any thought whatsoever to what they were going to do 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for decades to come. And so they burnt through their to-do lists. They had the long holiday, they did up the house, they started their Duolingo Spanish lessons, they were having a bit of piano, they were seeing their mates, they were getting bored of their mates because they were seeing their mates too often. They were getting bored of going to the restaurant when they didn't feel like they wanted a blowout because they hadn't worked and earned it that week. And so I started really listening into that and got deep and deeper and commissioned stacks of research and realised that not just in the UK, but everywhere in the world, we were missing a trick. We weren't listening to what was happening to us as we were hitting midlife as a different group of humans to anybody ever before us. And the world needed to pivot a little bit to make some changes. So that was that business sold and launched 55 Redefined to start solving for it.
I love that. And Lyndsey, do you think it's was in a way kind of counterintuitive? Because we hear a lot of stories, of course, about people being let go in their 40s and 50s. They're kind of deemed surplus to requirements. And, LinkedIn and, just talking to people, it's full of people that just struggle to find jobs. And, they are told, even though you're not really allowed to, you're too old, basically. Their perception is, you won't be able to get your head around the technology, all the rest of it. So I think it's really great you're doing this, but yeah, it was kind of a counterintuitive move, I guess.
It is, and ageism is real, guys. Everybody thinks it's I call it an otherism. So they think it only happens to other people, and they think, particularly when you're younger, perhaps if you're in your 30s or your 40s, they think it happens to other people who are not very good. They're like, oh, if someone's being told they're not kind of relevant anymore, it's because they're not keeping pace with, learning, or they're not modern in their thinking. And then everybody hits an age where it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter that the phone's been ringing non-stop for your entire career. Suddenly, it doesn't anymore. And so, we have to get to the core of why are we so ageist, to ourselves, to other people, in our businesses, in our media, everything from children's books. Have you ever seen some empowering older woman, or is she always a witch or a hag or a grandmother with a toffee in her purse, doing some knitting? She's never like the empowering entrepreneur or, the catwalk model who's, starting her acting career in her 70s, is she? So we've got a lot to unpick. But my passion is absolutely giving people agency to unpick it themselves. I'm coming at the world from two different angles here. My corporate hat, my CEO hat, is fixing businesses from the inside out. So how do we get rid of ageism? How do we change their systems, their processes, their definition of talent, so it's ageless? But I have to do exactly the same from the roots up with individuals. So there's people you're talking about, James, that are on LinkedIn. Well, if they can't get a job doing what they were doing, what are they going to now do? Are they going to become self-employed? Are they going to start their own business? Are they going to go back to university? Are they going to turn their passion, hobby into a business? Are they going to create income from different means? Are they going to start renting out rooms on Airbnb and start becoming a teacher and pivoting? So I do believe there's a whole world of employment for people if they're prepared to embrace the unknown and actually start to lean towards doing something different as we get into our 50s and beyond.
Yeah, because it's very much about, we talk about this a lot, it's that word redefine, which is so much, it's part of your business's identity. It's redefining what our identity is when we hit this age. I'm 46, so even for me, I mean, I've been self-employed for a long time, but I think a lot of people that I work with, it's kind of like that point in life where we do start to ask ourselves those big questions. It's like, I've been promised happiness and contentment and all these things, but actually now I'm here, they're not necessarily fulfilling me. So not only are we seeing a workforce that is being kind of put aside and maybe being made redundant for the younger generation, but also us asking those questions of like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, what makes me happy? What do I value? What's going to bring me fulfillment? Do you see a lot of that kind of questioning as well? Like, even in organizations, and then the people that you work with one-to-one?
Yeah, 100%. So I think your 50s, and either in the approach to it or when you particularly hit mid-50, the reason we call 55 redefined is that 55 is the peak pivot age for so many things. It's the peak pivot age for a divorce. So it's when most people get divorced in their relationships. It's the pivot age for family structures changing. So if you have got children, that's often an age when they're leaving home, going to college, and you're empty nesting and you've got a different dynamic at home. It's the peak age for people changing career and going, actually, I've been chasing the dream of being a partner in a law firm or doing this job here. And actually, after doing it for 30 years, I no longer want that thing, but I don't know what I do want. And it's also the peak age for people really kind of asking some big questions around their finances. So, depending on where you are in the world, you can often access a chunk of your pension from mid-50s. And so people are going, is that enough? Have I got enough to survive, to thrive in that? So there's so many things. And I think people start to look at everything and everyone around them in this life. Partly, I don't know what your rule is on swearing on this podcast.
Oh, no, go ahead. Swear away. We love that.
Well, it is genuinely the no fucks era. You're at the point in your life where you're like, actually, you've spent, your entire life trying to do self-improvement, and improve and strive. And now this is then all about you and actually going, what do I want? What do I want to deliver? What's going to make me happy? Now, my earlier life has been about other people and supporting other people's dreams. And so the biggest issue I have is that people start sleepwalking. So because they don't know what they want, they can often articulate what they don't want. So I know I don't want to keep being a plumber because I've been a plumber for 32 years and my knees won't cope with it anymore. But they don't know what they do want to do. They don't know what they can do. They don't know what their transferable skills are, or I know I'm not very happy and fulfilled at work, but it's paying me the money and it's paying for my mortgage and, nothing's broken. It's not really like giving me anything anymore. And so they get stuck on the hamster wheel of just repeat. And those days turn into weeks, which turn into years. And then all of a sudden you've got a real problem because your own level of self-esteem, your own level of excitement about the future is diminished because you've stopped looking forward. You've stopped working out, what am I going to be doing next year? What am I doing in 3 years? What am I going to do in 5 years? And having a roadmap for the future. So for me, a lot of this is about actually investing the time. And the book really, the Age Rebellion and Age Rebels, I talk about all these age rebels around the world who are normal people who are changing career, who are reskilling, who are doing something completely different with their life, to show people there's nothing stopping you other than perhaps what's in your own head about what you think you can do or what you think you should do for other people. So there's a lot of ripping up the rule book before we can then start to put it back together again and redefine what does this next phase look like.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing. I know a big theme of yours is kind of rejecting traditional retirement and looking at what the modern retirement model looks like. But I guess like intertwined with that is the idea of an extra 20, 30 plus years of life now.
Yeah.
That's obviously a massive opportunity for people, but do some people see that as a risk as well? I'm just thinking like, personality type. Some people might think, oh, I've budgeted to go until I'm 85, but I could go to 100, 110.
Oh, yeah.
What do?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, we have, and not all of your listeners will perhaps know this, but in the last century alone, we've added 30 healthy years to life expectancy. So when people say, I don't look anything like my parents, I don't dress like them, I don't think like them, don't want the same things like them, it's because they are literally nothing like them. Physiologically, mentally, we are nothing like our previous generations. And so that does mean that if you're 50 now, you have an odds-on chance, 50-50, of living to your late 90s. But that means that 49.9% of the population in their 50s will outlive that and get into triple digits. So the vast majority, and I hope every single person that's listening or watching this podcast will realise that 100-year life is the normal if you're currently in midlife. If you're currently aged 80, then your life expectancy will be slightly shorter, but it will still probably be 89 or 90. It's not like 70 or 80, which we all talk about. And so that has an opportunity and it has a threat. So you're right. There's a worry that people have. Two main worries that I hear. One is I'm going to run out of money. And the second worry is I'm going to just spend longer in ill health. So they picture these extra years and think, oh my God, I'm going to get dementia and it's going to be terrible and I'm just going to exist and I don't want to live longer. If I'm not going to be well. Well, there are things that you can do about both of those things, right? So, we have control over a lot of things in our life that will influence our health span as well as our lifespan. One of the first and major things that you can do is keep working. It has a direct link to mortality rates. And so one of the things I start to uncover in the book, and I don't get too statistical or, academic in it, but really there are things that you need to know about actually, if you stop working early, you will directly increase your chance of death sooner. Fact, it's undeniable. It is a fact. Okay. And then equally, there's things that you can do then around your planning and your finances that people think that work and retirement is like this cliff edge. I'm going to work today and tomorrow I'm going to be retired. And they think of this cliff edge moment. And we've got to start thinking of like 10-year glide paths. we're going to ease out of work, and we're going to create new things that are purposeful, new things that are interesting, new things that might have some income. We might become an artist and start selling our artwork. We might start reading to school children as a resource teacher 2 days a week. There's a whole world of things that you can do that you can earn money for, that people will never have given their attention to because they've retired from their corporate career, whatever their main endeavor was. And so I'm challenging people to design this phase of life where they never want to get rid of work. So what are the things that you can do in work? How do you start to use some of the tools that are out there, like Ikigai? Have you guys ever heard of Ikigai?
Yes, we've used it with our clients before. It's amazing.
It's amazing. And again, it's just so, I'm kind of really genuinely, the Age Rebellion is my gift to go, here's everything that you need. Here's all of the questions you need to ask. Here's the questions you need to ask of the loved ones around you. Questions you need to ask yourself, actually, about what you want now, not what other people want of you, but what do you want? And then here's the tools and the structure around how do you now turn this into a plan? How do you understand in that world of Ikigai, if people aren't familiar with it, how do you find your purpose? How do you understand what the world needs, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and all of these things that come together to start to create a new direction. And again, I bring this to life. So on that Ikigai one, I use my brother actually as a real life example. So my brother, Darren, is 3 years older than me. And he had worked in supermarkets. He worked for Asda since he was 16, and he's just about to turn 50, and was like, okay, I've been doing this for 33 years now, and a bit tired of working in the supermarket, and it's, same shit, different day. Oh, here we go, another Christmas again, spending half of my day in a freezer and the other half arguing with customers who are fighting over the last turkey. And I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. But, his kids, my nieces, Sophie and Jess, they're 13 and 10, and they've got a mortgage and they've got a life. And so people like my brother then get trapped. They're like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. I'm really not enjoying. In fact, I'm positively, hating work actually now, but I feel trapped. I feel trapped as the provider in my family. I've got decades before my kids are off my hands. What do I do? And so I used Ikigai with my brother, and you'll have to read the book to find the full case study in the story. But the direction that we went in was that he never had a degree. I went to university, he didn't, and he really felt he missed out on that. We went back to his school and his childhood of being really super interested in science and biology. And we hooked on audiology. Our dad is deaf, and my brother saw him through that journey of hearing. And so, long story very short, he's now completely retrained as an audiologist. He's got a degree from De Montfort University in audiology. He's just bought 3 Specsavers franchises, and he's got 3 stores now with audiology practice inside his team. He is the happiest I've seen him in over a decade. And if I look at the things around the family, his 2 daughters have watched every weekend as he's done his homework. He had to resit his maths GCSE and English GCSE to get his university degree. And so the kids are like super, super enthused about homework and study. And they also know they can get to 50 and go again and do something completely different.
I love that story, Lyndsey.
Fantastic,
inspiring
story.
That is so amazing. I mean, he's pretty lucky that he's got you as a sister as well, right?
Well, do you know what? One of the things about the Age Rebellion was, what's my role here? Because it's a very intimate conversation. I think a book. People take books to bed. They take them onto their sofa with a quiet moment. It's a you and me. It's not a one-to-many. It's a you and me conversation. And so for me, it's like I'm everybody's like big sister, slightly bossy, slightly sweary, I won't lie, but everybody's big sister that's going, here's what you need to know, here's what you need to do, go and do it or don't. I'm not your mother, so crack on or don't. I'm not going to tell you to do stuff, but I'm going to give you everything that you need to genuinely transform your life, and you can take it, and I really hope that not only do we create this rebellion of age rebels around the world, but it really grows. So it's not just then the individuals reading it, because often a lot of people that are talking to me, it's not about themselves, actually, it's about their partner. I'll get, women reach out to me and go, oh, my husband's been made redundant and he's in his late 50s, and, is really struggling to find a job and I don't know how to help him and he's getting more and more depressed, well, who needs the book? I'll get them guys reaching out to me going, I'm under so much pressure to retire. My wife wants us to travel more and see the world and spend more time with our grandkids, but I don't know how I can exist without work. And I love work, read the book, and all of these scenarios from, it's all about really being uplifting and energized and having a plan. But I don't show any of the messy stuff. I talk about death. I talk about ill health. I talk, you mentioned on the intro here that you've done a session around infidelity. Where I talk about relationships and the messy middle, which is it really, the messy middle.
Yeah, and then when you throw hormones in as well, woohoo!
Well, and hormones in both directions. So,
exactly.
Women, around the world have got, brilliant role models like Davina McCall and Mariella Frostrup who have been championing menopause. But other than James, and we've had this conversation before, James, there's not so many men around the world who are championing andropause and educating people around testosterone decline or what they can do around their own mental health and physical health as men in midlife. They're just told that they're suffering a midlife crisis, it's just given a label, but it's not given any solution. So again, I really dig into that, and there'll be some chapters that will be quite tricky, I think, for people to read, because I get them to put themselves into some uncomfortable scenarios, but only with the view being that I want them to develop this resilience bone for the future, really get this muscle, this resilience ability, so that when something shit does happen in the future and they lose someone they love, or they have a relationship breakdown or they made redundant, let's not wait until that event happens, because let's face it, it's going to happen to all of us. Let's prepare for it now and work out, how do I even have a strategy for this event? And if it, bless the world, it doesn't happen to me, then it's sure as hell going to happen to someone in the group of people that I love, a friendship group, a colleague, etc. So I'm going to be the person that can help them as well. So it's just really about changing how we think about this phase and supercharge it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I just love, talking about like that inspiration. I think some of us get locked in as well to those people closest to us, and then they're all feeling the same and they're all experiencing the same, and they're all, we all moan a bit, and then we get locked. They say we're most like those 5 people around us, and you should kind of check in with that and think, okay, what are those 5 people around? Sometimes I can't do anything about one of those, but I think actually that it's so important, that connection, that community as well, when we get to this messy middle, that we are, I suppose, mixing with people that inspire us. Or that can tell the story of a challenge or a difficulty that they overcome, and can share how they got through that, and can lend a hand. And I think that's so important, is to sometimes borrow belief. We talk a lot about that. Borrow belief from someone else, even if we don't have it.
Yeah.
Or you're in a circle, and this book, like you are literally like the big sister sitting on the sofa or on the bed going, I believe in you. This is, I've got you. This is what you need to do.
And I can give you literally thousands of people now around the world, every part of the world, who have done something about it and transformed their life. And so that borrowed belief, I love that phrase, Claire. I think that I'm going to steal that one off of you, borrowed belief. That's a keeper. That is. But I think there's this element of, there's the role modelling. But the other bit that really, I suppose, I've had some pre-reviewers to the book, as you always do, so that, you get like the people's review on the back of the cover and things that get a little advanced copy. And what came out from those reviewers as well was language. So there's all the way through the book, it's like, how do you have these tricky conversations? And how do you even have the language to describe what you're doing? So we find lots of people, let's say you're retiring from your corporate career. Let's say, you've worked in a company for 30 years and you're in your late 50s or early 60s and you're retiring. But you're not actually retiring, because you're about to go and do something else. You're about to go and study nutrition, or you might be doing a course on this, or you might be doing craft. People have absolutely no way of describing themselves other than saying that they're retired. They don't know the language. They don't know how to say what era they're in, so it doesn't sound like a reduction from what they were doing in their corporate life. So again, there's a whole sections really exploring how do you describe what you're doing with your time. So when someone says, "What do?" You don't just automatically defer to your past around what did you used to do in the past, but actually you're talking about what you're doing now with intent, with interest, and you can do and how do you do that for the rest of your life? And how do you keep every 10 years asking yourself this question, what do I want to be when I grow up? Because let's face it, if you're going to live to 100, you're going to have to reinvent yourself at least every decade, probably every 5 years, and go, right, okay, well, I've done that now. Now what do I want to be when I grow up? Because there's nothing stopping me from being whatever I want to be.
It's so empowering, isn't it?
It is.
It's super empowering.
And I think it's been a big shift, I think for our parents' generation, careers tended to be very linear, right? You joined a company and then you stayed there till you retired. Or if you did change, it was to a very similar company doing a very similar role.
Yeah.
And that kind of doesn't really exist now, I'd say, for probably 99% of the workforce.
Yeah.
So I think, again, this time of life, it's great to embrace. I love the way you refine. I'm not saying I'm retired, but what do I do? But it's about embrace things like portfolio careers, being a multi-entrepreneur, all that kind of stuff.
Because that was looked down upon. I think actually still we've got the bits left over from that, because I've always been quite, I'm doing a bit of it. Sounds like you as well. I'm doing a bit of this, I'm doing a bit of that. I've been always like that, but I always felt like a bit ashamed of that. That I couldn't it was almost like this. You can't stick to one thing, Claire.
People like clear labels, don't they?
Yeah, you can't stick to one. Are you this, or are you this, or are you this? But actually, we're in a world now where that has had to change with technology and AI. Those portfolio careers are becoming more acceptable, and I think that's a real plus for us messy middle people.
Well, it is, and also, again, it's around finding not just the language to describe the what you're doing, but how do you get that one-liner when someone asks you that question around the why you're doing it? So for you guys, if someone wants to say, what do? You say, well, we're transforming, the midlife generation for absolutely millions of people around the world, and we do that by having a podcast and content and various things. But you're transforming midlife. So that's what you're doing. And whatever it is that anybody's doing, whether they're studying a new course, whether they're going to develop a hobby that they've not picked up in 30, 40 years, there's a way of describing not just the what, but the why you're doing it, which then has a real impact on the recipient. And I think when you do that, you develop your own self-confidence and your own value, and you can own your own space with a little bit of sharper elbows, going, actually, I do deserve to be here in this conversation. I'm not just a job title. I'm not just a role on a business card. I am making an impact on the world, and this is how I'm doing it. But so, we put so much effort into career planning and life planning in our youth. And then, perhaps mid-career in 30s and 40s. But it just then completely tails off as people hit, kind of late 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. And I'm like, no. This is where you're now at your cleverest. You've got crystallized intelligence. Let's face it, as humans, we can't even use both sides of our brain until we hit the age of 25. So at this point, we can be logical and creative. We can problem solve better than anyone before. So how are we going to use all of this knowledge? And again, giving people agency. So I share some of the tips and tricks around how do you continue to grow neurons every day. We can't stop our bodies physiologically aging. That's just a matter of life. But you can 100% stop brain aging by growing new neurons. You have an infinite ability to continue to do this through life. And so giving people the methods to do that and knowledge around that, particularly if they've perhaps always been self-employed, or they've not had that kind of education, or they've not had that background, which is exposed them to this kind of knowledge, I think that can be transformative to people, to give them that knowledge that means that they can change their own life.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about kind of reprogramming your mind, because I think sometimes we have been stuck in this kind of one way of doing things, and then we start to question it as we get to this kind of middle life, and we start questioning it. But then our brain, that needs to be almost rewired. So like, how do we start doing that so that we are shifting that self-identity. So yeah, so we can kind of like stand in that new place, that new identity, and feel more self-assured. I think, I think the power of the brain is still so untapped.
Oh,
So untapped.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you give all these tools. Your book sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's and there's so much of unpicking, money is another thing, right? It doesn't matter whether you've got, oh my God, it doesn't matter if you've got pots of money, and it doesn't matter if you've got no money. Neither of those things gives you purpose in life. It doesn't make you happy. It can ease situations, don't get me wrong. And so again, I have a real exploratory through money. And what does that mean, whether you're in the have or the have-nots camp, actually? So a big part of me was writing for everybody. It's not for, white collar readers on LinkedIn. It's literally a book for everybody. It's a very accessible book that I hope really helps millions of people around the world, wherever they're living and whatever their circumstances. But money is a thing that people anchor on. So given I've got this absolute mission to retire the term retirement, by the time I'm hitting 70, like if anyone's still talking about retirement, I've failed, right? But I want to retire the term retirement, but to do so, you have to unpick some stuff. And so when people anchor on a retirement age, normally they do so for one or two reasons. They either anchor on a financial figure where they think through their sums, they've figured, a bit like you said earlier, James, I've worked out I need this much money. And once I've got this much money, I'm free and I can afford to not work. Or they anchor on an age, which is a completely irrational anchor based on an age that they came up with when they were in their 20s. I will be retired by 58 or 60, an age that a parent retired at, or an age that they lost a loved one. So my colleague died at 55, and therefore I am not going to be working a day beyond 55. So they anchor completely irrationally on something that's nothing to do with them and their life, or they anchor on a number. And again, neither of those things make you happy. And so unless it doesn't matter when you retire, it doesn't matter whether you retire at 50 or whether you retire at 80 or you never retire at all, unless you know what you're going to be doing with your time. How are you going to be waking up in the morning? What is it you're going to be doing? Why are you getting dressed? What are you even wearing? What are you thinking about? What's challenging your brain? What's getting you excited? Until you've solved for that, these things are completely irrelevant questions. And so once we find, and then I can say to my corporate life, because we have a brilliant corporate solution called Me Redefined that we deploy in large companies, which helps people go on this kind of journey. And is the minute they've got a plan for the future, they completely remove their desire to retire. We see it jump by a minimum of 5 years, normally 10 years. And they're like, why was I thinking I had to stop work to do that? Why can't I do both? Why can't I just tilt the balance and work less and live more over a period of time? Why did I think that this would make me happy? And we even see in the work context, colleagues start to reach out to people they used to work with that they know had retired in the last kind of 3 to 5 years and ask them, are you happy? And they will get very mixed answers around that, but particularly men will often say, no, I'm not. I miss all of the things I thought I hated about work. I miss, that person that I didn't used to get on with, but actually gave me a challenging conversation, the needing to be somewhere and do something for someone, that feeling needed as a human being. Clothing, a reason, reason to go to that great coffee shop, that I used to be me where I worked. All of these things they miss from their life. And so again, another way we keep people kind of really engaged is like paying forward these stories of people that are 5, 10, 15 years ahead of you, going, what do they wish that they'd thought about? What are the questions they wish they'd asked themselves before they pulled the ripcord?
Lyndsey, I want to ask something like psychological safety is a really important driver of human behavior. And there'll be people listening to this going, I feel really inspired right now. But then they'll think about it and they'll let fear become a player. How important is it to have a plan that's all worked out of what you're going to do versus just trying stuff and seeing what you like and what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, 100%. So there's a whole section actually I do, which is around what's holding you back. So fear, and particularly fear of disappointing others is a big reason for people not to, fear of, if I take that big career leap and leave the job I hate and go and restudy, what happens if I don't get another job? What happens if no one wants to employ me? If I can't cope with being a caregiver to this family member and the intensity that I'm doing. What's everyone going to think to me if I say that I don't want to do that? Let's say I'm about to become a grandparent, and my adult kids are going, great, we're going to move near you, mum, so you can look after our kids. And I'm thinking, please don't, I don't want to look after your kids. Fear if I don't know how to have that conversation, that I don't want to be a full-time grandparent. I want to be a weekend grandparent, and I love my career and I want to keep working. So fear is a massive thing that stops people taking action. So there's an element around how do we unpick that? How do we really, and this is, I think, the beauty of a book, actually, whether you listen to books or whether you read books, but it is an intimate conversation. So it's not that psychological safeties. You're not having to say this out loud. You're not having to have these challenging conversations. You were just processing them in your own head and going, could I do that? What would happen if I did that? And what's the worst that would happen if I planned that? And so you can kind of get to a comfortable position before you actually decide that you're going to tell anybody, if you decide at all that you're going to tell anybody about what's going on in your head. So I think that piece is really there. And then for me, it is about this coming back to it, every 10 years, every 5 years, every year, and going, do you know what? There isn't just one purpose in life either. I'm an entrepreneur, right? And this is my 8th business. And everybody has this thing that, like, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be an inventor. You have to have come up with the iPhone, or, you need to have come up with something snazzy. I'm like, no, you just need to do something slightly better than the next person. And then you've got a successful business.
Amen to that. I love that. I love that.
That's all you need to do, whether it's a coffee shop that's just better than the other coffee shops in your high street, whether it's a podcast that's a better podcast than the other podcasts on that genre. That's all you have to do as an entrepreneur. And so we put these big barriers, but, I've had 8 different purposes in my career so far, and I'm 47, I'm not done yet. And so there's going to be something every year that I'm trying to solve and trying to get closer to, that really means that actually you just keep reinventing yourself and giving your permission to go, actually, that wasn't the thing I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board. I'm going to go back and do my ikigai and go, right, okay, well, where else could I go? What else is interesting to me that is a little thread that I can start to pull on and go, okay, let's see where this takes me.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that reinvention.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like we see a lot with our clients. It's those beliefs. It's like, what's that part of, like, what's holding you back? What are the stories you're telling yourself? And are they even true? Are they really true? Like we've taken clients through that. I love that, like getting them to question. They've got this real thing in their head and they're like, hold on to it as a belief that's true. And then you're kind of like, is it really? One of the things I was going to actually say to you and ask you is kind of to wrap up, I suppose, as we come to the end of the podcast, is if someone is listening to this, like Jane said, and they're just so fired up and so excited, which I know they will be, because I am. I'm sitting here like, this is an amazing thing for Lyndsey to be putting out in the world. So they're like really, really super excited. Other than buying your book, which is going to take them through this entire process, what would you say is the top thing? What would you say if you had someone sitting in front of you right now going, this all sounds amazing, where do I start? What would you say, other than buying the book?
So the book gives structure, and it gives you that base level of knowledge that you need to do to take action. But aside from that, it would actually just be booking an appointment with yourself to think about what is it that you want to do in the next 5 to 10 years. I find people are so busy with life, and they'll make time to, all right, I need to book a holiday, or I need to sort out that dentist appointment, and I need to do this. And life is what's happening to them as they're like in this busy rush going forward. But I see so few people that are making plans. So they're literally sleepwalking into the best years of their life without a plan and a strategy. So whether they read the book, whether they don't read the book, whether they need support or don't need support, just spending some proper hours, and I don't mean like a minute, I mean hours, really thinking about, what do I want for the next 5 to 10 years? what do I want my health to be? What do I want my relationships to be? What do I want my work situation, my financial situation? Where do I want to live? We're in a digital nomad world right now. The guy who's, just started working with my marketing team is currently based himself in Vietnam. He's like, oh, I've just never been here. I thought I'd work here for a month.
I love that.
As long as you don't mind being on a crazy hour call with me, crack on. So, I just think the boundaries are open, but we've got to have a plan. And so that would be the big thing to me is like, when did you last invest in yourself and spend the proper time thinking about shaping what does the next few years look like for you?
That's such amazing advice.
Great advice.
I love that. Oh, it's been so good talking to you. I can talk to you for ages. Got like a whole list of questions that we were going to go through. And like a lot of the time, we've just kind of gone with the flow of it. But it's just been so wonderful to speak to you. And we're very on the same page with everything and just really looking forward to people grabbing hold of your book. Because I just know it's going to help so many people. Yeah.
It's The Age Rebellion, available in all good bookshops and all online retailers.
It's everywhere around the world. It publishes in the UK and Australia and India on the 7th of May. It publishes across North America on the 12th of May. And so it'll be available on all those. And it's I've recorded the audiobook. So if you like a bit of swearing, you can get the audiobook.
Fantastic.
In the book, there's a few more hashes around where I was swearing, but on the audiobook, they didn't bleep me out. And also Kindle version and hardback. So hardback is what's just coming out in the stores. So literally any retailer, all of the main retailers are on there. But there's also a website, The Age Rebellion. And so because I am this kind of slightly bossy, kind of, stick a rocket up here, get it done person, there's an ability when people are working through that they can register their details and I can send them like a prompt or a monthly idea, or once they're a year after reading the book, I'm going to give them a nudge and kind of go, okay, it's been a year now, so now what are you going to do? What's the plan now? So if you need that little bit of assistance as well, then head over to theagerebellion.com as well, and you'll find some nudges on there as well.
Amazing.
I'm going to go and sign up there now.
I know. And also I've started following you on Instagram as well, and some of the videos. I was like, yes, this lady's got gumption and feist it. I love it. I love it.
There is, yeah. So Instagram, The Age Rebellion, and Facebook, The Age Rebellion. And then I'm also personally on Instagram as Lyndsey Simpson, or Simpson Dr. Lyndsey, I think it is on Instagram. So yeah, please do give me a follow. And there's so much more to come on the social channels, actually. I've been doing Vox Pop recordings for the last few months with different people, asking them, what are they better at now than they were when they were younger? What are their hopes for the future? And there's just, people from all walks of life from everywhere. And so you're going to love the age rebels that I start introducing people to around the world. So
I think in a world where we are bombarded with such shit news a lot of the time, and where it's just division and fear, and this is what we need. Like, we need this kind of motivating, inspiring and uplifting stuff, especially around this midlife arena. Like, we hear so much about, it's all downhill and the menopause is really... And you're like, come on.
Absolute tosh. And by the way, this is now the majority cohort. So 50% of the population are now over 50. So we're no longer a triangle population where we used to have older people and then everybody was younger. Nobody's having kids. I don't have kids. So our population, is now a square where we are equal 50-50. But over the next kind of decade or so, it goes the other way around as we have a majority older population. And so again, I am absolutely glass half full, guys. If you're not getting that gist, you will get that. But what does that mean if you're thinking of reinventing yourself? Well, it means that every product, every service, everything that every human uses on the planet is going to need reinventing, because no one wants grey plastic walking sticks. Nobody wants wearable devices that look like they're bandaging up to something. All of these things, no one wants, unattractive hearing aids. All of these things that are going to help us live our daily lives to the fullest need people in this age group developing better solutions, better services, better marketing. And that means that every company needs to employ that demographic, because that's where all the consumers are. So,
what an amazing way to finish. Love this.
Brilliant.
Oh, Lyndsey, you're just a breath of fresh air. You really are.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And don't forget to take the Midlife Reset Audit now to receive personalised insights into what's holding you back from living your healthiest, happiest midlife. So go ahead and take the audit now at themidlifementors.com/audit.